Welcome back inside the den. We have a good one today. Chris Murray is joining me. Today we're going to talk to Steve Young. Obviously, we're recording on a different date, but we talked with Steve Young up at the ACC Media Day. Great guest. Just kind of like tell us about that conversation with him.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be able to listen to the whole thing, but he was certainly running through a lot of different media people. So we were one of the last to get him. So we had about 10 minutes with him, but asked him a couple of questions that were locally relevant, some Brandon Aiyuk questions, Colin Kaepernick questions, what brings him back to the American Century Championship. So it was a fun conversation. And on the back end, we'll talk a little bit about the questions we were hoping to ask, but maybe didn't get quite to because we ran out of a little bit of time.
All right, let's get into that conversation with Steve Young.
Thank you so much for joining us, Steve Young, here at the American Century Championship Media Day. So I know you've talked with a lot of media about why you come back to this event, but when you think of Lake Tahoe and the American Century Championship on your summer calendar, I guess what comes to your mind?
Well, first of all, family. I wouldn't be able to do it for 3 days or 4 days without my family coming with me. So they love it. They want to be here. That's what allows me to do it. So I think family first, and then that camaraderie and the relationships through the years of the guys that I've known forever, some guys I've known of forever, but now I'm learning and meeting them, and that is always fun. And when you've played professional sports at a high level, and it doesn't matter whether it's a different sport, basketball, and sometimes it's even better that it was a different sport. There's a connection with people that are, Hall of Famers, people that played a long time that you watched and admired. Don't know, and now you come to the tournament, you get to know them a little bit, and you play golf with them, and golf is amazing for the relationships it builds, because when you've played 18 holes with somebody, you've seen they've been exposed, right? Like they've been, you go through all the emotions of that, like you're bonded playing up here together. So in that way, you ask me what it is about this place. It's family getting up here, and then the relationships. That's what matters.
Is there anybody you've been nervous to approach? I mean, you're a Hall of Fame quarterback, you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I'm sure the celebrities here are maybe a little bit nervous to be around you because of, watching you play, but
I think that the spirit of the place is kind of like Bing Crosby's clam bake, you know what I mean? Like, it's family, right? It's a relaxed atmosphere, no stress as far as the relationships. Stress, the golf is stress, but not the relationships. So in many ways, that's what makes it so great, is it's so casual. They do a great job. American Century does a great job of getting us together a number of times for dinner, different activities, and it gives us a chance to really kind of commune together, and that's really cool.
Kind of getting into the NFL landscape, Justin Jefferson just signed a huge contract today, and the receiver market just seems to keep on going. I mean, just absurd.
Does it surprise you how much players are getting out to play the game?
No, you can't. You have to recognize that an enterprise like the 49ers that was worth $500 million 20 years ago is now worth 10. So player salaries have not gone up that much. They've gone up, but not as much as, $500 million to $10 billion. So equity values are skyrocketing. You've got to figure salaries are going to go up. But if they skyrocket the way that equity values have gone up, you'd be looking at players making $250 million a year. So don't let it be shocking to you, because the equity values in the NFL and the value of the NFL has skyrocketed. And so the players should share that. And the fact that those numbers make you feel fun, like, what in the world? One guy making that? Well, one guy's making that over there owning the team. So don't be confused.
So you look around the league, obviously the guard market exploded this summer, of spring. The receiver market certainly blossomed. When are running backs going to get their due as?
Running back, the game has changed.
Yeah.
In the last 5-6 years, they changed the game because of safety. They didn't allow defenders to launch anymore, so they couldn't control, and slowed the game down. Even though they're amazing athletes, they had to bring their legs and their arms to tackle. It's maybe a fraction of a second longer, but in that fraction of a second, the game is so much more wide open. There's just, they can't control the space they used to. And so in that way, the game changed. And in the change, used to be you had to line up, in the I formation and pound people on the back that could, can make a couple of guys miss for a couple of yards. That's just not the game anymore. The I back is dead. That idea that you're going to line up in you can do it every once in a while, but the game is just not that game anymore. And so the back's game today is Christian McCaffrey's game. Line up a receiver, line up in the slot, come in motion, line up in the backfield, catch it, catch the ball in space, a lot of counters. Like it's just, and there are a lot of backs who can do that. Used to be there was a unique person that could. There's just a lot of running backs, and so the market's not gonna come back. It'll come back for one or two elite players, but there's too many backs, and the game has changed so much that the job of running back is different and forever different because of the change in the game.
Listened to a couple of your interviews out there. Brandon Aiyuk, a local Reno kid, you said he's one of the top 3 wide receivers in the NFL. I guess, what is his value to the 49ers, and what priority should they place on signing him long term?
Again, the game's changed, getting open in space, in different spaces. Like there's some speed threats. There's people who work on the field. There's people that need to be in motion to get open. Brandon's a guy that you can't cover him. That way there's no place he can't roam. And so today's game, it's an amazing thing. Debo is also uniquely skilled in today's game. So they have these 2 top of the game players on the same team with the best back, with the best tight end, with an up-and-coming quarterback. Like it's insane how much talent they have. But Brandon is a guy that they've trained that you just can't lose him because he's going to be great for 10 years. But can you pay him $150 million? They're going to have to pay. You can't pay everybody. They're not going to keep this up. Debo, George, Christian, Brandon, you'd have to have no one else on the team to keep them on. And so, with Nick and with Fred and now to pay, the names will change. I just don't think it should be Brandon because I think he's that talented and that good for that long, and he can get open in space in today's game so uniquely as a threat outside. You also need somebody who can buy people. Brandon could do that as well, and that's what they don't have, and you can't lose that. If Brandon goes away, who's that? Who can stretch the field? Who can do what the Dolphins can do? Who can do what? There's a few teams that have somebody like that. You got to hold on.
So you mentioned all that talent. If they get through next year and they don't win a Super Bowl, I guess how would you describe the Kyle Shanahan era?
49ers, they have an advantage in development. They will have that as long as Kyle's there and as long as John is there. So the window won't close. People say, the window's open, the window's closed. No, it's not binary. It's the window's wide open, it's narrowing, or it's narrow, but it won't close. It really will be about, if it's not this year, there'll be different names. And it'll have to be someone on a rookie contract or 2 guys on a rookie contract that you're now wearing their jersey because they're so good that you don't even know their name right now. That's, if we're going to win a Super Bowl in 2026, 27, 28, it's going to be with names that you don't know right now.
Yeah, the rookie contracts, all the more important.
That's the game, right? The game is pay the big boys as much as you can, and then get as many rookie guys that are really great on those contracts, and that's how you do it.
I want to scale back. We're talking about scheme, but your backstory, obviously, going to BYU. What was in the water at the time? I mean, it was really the genesis of the air raid, of how Mummy getting inspired. Some of the coaching staff that was on there, Norm Chow. You had a GA and Andy Reid. That was Mike Holmgren. If you think about it, just all these years later, how that coaching staff kind of revolutionized the NFL.
So it started out a little Bell Edwards, head coach, recognizing that the athletes at BYU weren't as talented athletically as the people in the WAC. And so by committing to the nature of throwing the football, which no one was doing, I was running the pure option, no one was throwing the ball. But if you committed to it, you could actually punch above your weight in doing things that are unusual. And that's what BYU did in the 70s. And then in 1980, when Jim McMahon was there, was just throttling everybody. And then we started to recruit better athletes. And there was no one else, maybe Miami, Florida, and maybe Stanford were throwing the ball like that, but nobody, if you want to play pro football, you want to play BYU. And so it attracted the coaches that wanted to do that because it was the only place in the country that was throwing the ball like that. And at college level, quarterbacks, the lineup of quarterbacks that I got there was 8 guys lined up. Like let me get in here. And so in that way, it was unique. And it led the way, right? Because in time, no one runs the veer option anymore. Maybe a couple teams, but everyone's throwing the football over the field. And it started. You can make a claim it started at BYU.
And didn't really revolutionize football maybe, but when Chris Ault was here with Colin Kaepernick, he played at the University of Nevada. I covered him with the Wolfpack. You know, that was kind of a different genesis of how to run offense. And obviously,
Bill Walsh told me when I first met him, he says, the game can, the quick passing game and the West Coast offense can be more explosive with someone who can run, quarterback that can run. So that's why I wanted me. I was like, I want to show that, and that came out with Brett Favre as well. And then I think guys like Colin took the game even further, because then it became like, especially out of the shotgun. I never lined up down the shotgun in my professional life in the NFL. Not one. What a waste. Because Bill didn't realize that you could have timing. John Elway proved when Mike Shanahan went to Denver that you could run the West Coast offense from the shotgun. And it was like, wait. So these are all iterations of what, we could say started BYU, but what Bill started in the West Coast offense, and now we say with Colin and Nevada is really a fulfillment of, if Bill was alive to watch that, you would have said, yeah, I could see that was building up what I was doing.
and then obviously Colin was great with the 49ers, but it was kind of like a shooting star. It didn't last, I guess, maybe as long as many hoped. I guess, how do you, analyze his career?
Well, Colin, I mean, it was, I remember interviewing him before the championship game his first year, and he took over for Alex Smith in the Monday night game that I was at. And I said, Colin, have you been hit hard in the NFL? And he's like, not really. And what's your biggest challenge? He goes, he had just because the nature of the game had just changed. I described to you, more wide open, his talent level of what he was able to do. And he admitted, like, I don't know football the way I'm going to know it. But the game just was perfect timing for him. I mean, just remember against the Packers he ran for like 200 yards. Mm-hmm. It was insanity. No one even knew how to defend it. And then, like anything in the NFL, defenders start to say, okay, we get that part of the game. We're going to force you, and this is true for every quarterback, we're going to force you to sit there and deliver the ball. You have to deliver it over and over. And that is a different skill. And the guys that can be dynamic and grab that skill are Patrick Mahomes, are Josh Allen. You know what I mean? Those are the and Colin needed to grab that skill and didn't. I mean, he didn't grab it as much as other guys, and that's where it got him. Was that skill that it takes to stand in the pocket and deliver balls and decipher through and not move. Your legs are chopped off essentially, and that's where it gets a lot of dynamic, mobile quarterbacks, and I think a lot of them through the years. That transition's tough. We need years. Some guys need years to transition, like Justin Fields right now is trying to figure it out. He's now gone to his second team, trying to figure it out. Some guys need time, and the NFL, what is there not a lot of them?
Well, he is Steve Young. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a new swing, so if you come out to the American
So you heard
Century,
that, right?
yeah, he's got a new swing.
Lock it down.
Top 50 finish, top 40 finish. What are you guaranteeing?
I guarantee you. What is top half?
Yeah, 40. Well, there's like 90, so top 45.
Yeah, that's gotta be. Let's go above zero.
Hey.
Let's be in the positive.
Okay.
Exactly.
I'd like to attack a little bit, right?
Okay.
Let's be decent. God.
Okay, the goal for him this summer to be decent. Thank you so much
All
for
right,
joining
thanks for
us.
joining us.
Well, Chris, yeah, that was a good conversation with Steve. A lot of football being talked. Obviously, we talked a little bit about his golf game. But what'd you take away from that conversation with Steve?
Well, I thought it was interesting that he said that the 49ers basically have to keep Brandon Aiyuk. Obviously, he's a local kid, McQueen High graduate, and they've got so many stars that they've already paid that I think it's going to be hard to give him what he deserves, which is probably $25 to $30 million a year. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens. I know as we tape this, Brandon is sitting out mini camp. It's a mandatory session, so that's going to cost him about $100,000 as he's trying to send a signal that he wants to be paid before this year, even though he only has 1 year left on his contract. So I do think they'll end up keeping him. I think they'll probably get rid of Deebo Samuel after this year and try and keep Brandon long term as the number one wide receiver. And then asking about Colin Kaepernick, I was kind of angling a little bit more for, he was kind of kicked out of the league more so than played his way out of the league. But obviously Steve talked a little bit about the, defenses maybe catching up to him and that impacting his productivity. So if we had a little bit more time, I probably would ask that follow-up question. Do you feel like Colin played his way out of the league, or was his protest something that got him out of the league? So you kind of ran short there, but like we said, Steve probably talked with, I don't know, like 8 to 10 media members one-on-one for about 15 minutes each. So we cut into his lunchtime. So it was nice that he was able to spend some time with us. But he obviously great insight from one of the best quarterbacks ever.
Yeah, obviously he knows quarterback play far more than we do. But yeah, I'd agree with you that Kaepernick, it was less his play and probably more kicked out. But I think he would be great for the modern NFL if he came out today. I mean, look at the quarterbacks around the league: Josh Allen, Mahomes, Hurts. Lamar Jackson. Not that he has that kind of speed, but just players that create mobility and can extend the play. So I think that if Cap were coming out today, he'd fit well in the mold of the current NFL. But yeah, that is still a great conversation, and I enjoyed him kind of talking back to his days at BYU and kind of getting inside football and talking about just scheme and stuff like that, because you can tell he's passionate about it. But at the media day, he ended up talking about how his daughter's playing flag football kind of reinvigorated that spark and joy for football. And it was kind of cool just talking to Steve, chopping it up.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Colin, he's been out of the league for 7 years now. That's actually longer than he played in the league, which was 6 years. So, yeah, he's not going to get another opportunity. It's kind of sad that it played out the way that it did play out. I know that Steve Young was a really big supporter of his as a player early in his career. I talked at the ACC with Steve Young about Cap back in like the early 2010s, just about how he was coming on and becoming kind of the next big thing in the NFL. And obviously that was ended pretty shortly after a couple of pretty stellar seasons. We weren't able to ask him about Chubba Purdy, so I guess he's actually taken a bit of a mentorship role with the new Nevada football quarterback. He transferred in from Nebraska. Obviously, his older brother Brock plays for the 49ers, so there's that relationship. And Steve Young told Chubba that, whatever he needs in terms of support or guidance, he's there to help him as he navigates his Wolfpack career. So that was cool. And another thing we weren't able to ask him, JoJo Townsell, he was a former Hug High star who played with UCLA and then the NFL. But in between college and the NFL, he actually played in the USFL with Steve Young. So one of Steve Young's first great wide receivers was actually a local kid here from Northern Nevada. And I guess JoJo goes up to the ACC every year and says hi. So that was kind of cool that 40 years ago, those two played together and they still have a bit of a relationship. But, a lot of local links, and that's kind of the angle you try and get to when you talk with these guys is, can we get the fans some perspective that these national stars have maybe something going on here locally? So, to hear him talk about Brandon, to hear him talk about Cap and, I guess how the NFL game is changing. And I thought it was really cool that he's really supportive of player salaries going way up, because I think a lot of fans will look and be, why should a wide receiver get $40 million a year? Why should a quarterback get $60 million a year? Well, it's because the product brings in so much money that those players should, especially in football, which is such a physical sport and, takes years off your life. I mean, if you're lucky, maybe it only takes 10 years off your life. It's such a brutal sport. Those guys should get paid top dollar. And if you're Brandon Aiyuk, you want that top dollar now, because you never know, you might get an injury this season. So, yeah, really cool to be able to spend some time with Steve. He's one of the more gregarious guys up there. He's always been really great, sharing his time and his perspective.
He's great, yeah, and I agree with you that, and with the Steve sentiment with just the players getting more money, it's turning more into a players' league, much like the NBA or even the MLB is. Obviously, the MLB has a bunch of hoops and stuff to get through until you get to that big payday. Whereas, it's really, you're drafted, and if you're really good, it's after your first 4 years and you get that fifth-year option. But still, I feel like the NFL is trending in that direction where it's a players' league, and contracts will be demanded. And we're seeing it now with Aiyuk sitting out and CeeDee Lamb sitting out there in Dallas. It's just the demand's going to get higher, and I think it's great. There's going to be more money influxed into that, and certainly we're seeing it more obviously in college, and not to get off task, but the NIL and all that, and so more money should be thrown around considering how big of a industry football and at all levels, really. It'll be interesting to see if Aiyuk does end up signing or gets traded off somewhere. I think it's not scheme dependent, like Steve was saying. Steve had this sentiment when he was talking about it with our Mike Stephenson, saying that if he leaves, he could potentially not be playing as well because he's not in a certain scheme. I think if you have the ability to get open, you're going to get open, and you're going to trade assets to get a guy like Aiyuk. You're probably not going to be towards the bottom of the league. So I think he's not going to be, if he gets traded to like the Steelers, it's not like he's, going to like fall off a cliff. He still
Yeah.
has the talent to still play at a high level. It's just, obviously quarterback play and scheme, huge part of it. It's nice to be in a Shanahan offense, but I think he's talented enough to thrive wherever he's at, like a Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and I mean, Steve said to us, like, he can get open in a variety of different ways, right? So he can be, a guy that you do in motion. He could get, he could be a slot guy. He could be your deep threat because he's got that speed. He's a great blocker as well. I mean, he was a second-team AP All-Pro for a reason. So I think he's holding out for that $100 million. It's kind of interesting. Like, you don't really see holdouts in any other sport. You don't see baseball players hold out. You don't see NBA players hold out. Now, some stars will get grumpy and maybe not play a couple games to try and get traded. NHL, you don't see holdouts. It's very unique to the NFL because these guys know that they need to hit their window financially. Like, they have to maximize when they are a high, leverage product to go and get that money because it's not going to all be guaranteed. So, I don't have a feeling like he's going to get paid before the start of this season. So it'll be interesting to see that game of chicken who breaks first. Does Brandon report? Who do they actually give him the contract? I just don't think they can give him that money because you look at everybody that they have locked up: Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. These guys are all like paid at the top of their position, and they have to save some money to lock up Brock Purdy in the future. So I think they try and play it through this year, try and have both Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel on the same team, and then give Brandon the long-term deal and then kind of move on from Deebo and take whatever the cap hit is there as they prepare to pay Brock Purdy. Now, the question is, can they get through this season and keep Brandon happy to be able to pay him ahead of next season? I don't know.
Well, this season should be the last ride. Remember, Brock Purdy's a 7th-round pick, so he doesn't get that 5th-year option. So really, this year is like he's entering into his 4th year because you don't have that extended option.
Yeah.
So you typically want to pay a quarterback the year before he enters his final year of his deal. That's good practice because, good negotiations. And obviously, if you enter the last year of a deal and you're still negotiating, they can kind of hold out and be like, well, I'm going to wait till March and see what the rest of the league is going to offer me if you're going to lowball me. So really, after this season, the Niners need to start negotiating with Purdy on a potential extension, and that would presumably be towards the top of the league if his play continues where he's at. So, yeah, it's gonna change, and I think the writing's on the wall with the McCaffrey extension because you shell out some more money for him, and you can't keep everybody.
That's the thing, and I don't even know that you can franchise Brandon because all of these wide receiver deals, like the franchise for a wide receiver next year is going to be gigantic. That's going to be a huge number. It probably would save you money to do it long-term and spread it out a little bit more. And then you look at the fact the 49ers drafted a wide receiver with their 1st pick, with their 4th pick. The 49ers have a history of getting these deals done really close to the start of the season. It happened with Deebo. It happened with Bosa. So I guess it'll be interesting to track. But, locally it's kind of cool to track because this guy's going to get maybe the biggest contract for a Northern Nevada athlete ever.
Yeah.
When all is said and done. JaVale McGee's had a big contract. Vermont Sessions has had a couple of big contracts. Obviously, Joel Bitonio, Austin Corbett has had some nice contracts. I mean, you go back to like the baseball stars, Matt Williams, that was kind of before players were getting paid a ton of money. So this guy is probably going to be the highest paid Northern Nevada athlete ever. And that'll be a really cool distinction. I mean, I'm ready to put out my article. The highest contracts anybody from Northern Nevada has ever had. I know Cap got a big contract, but almost all that wasn't guaranteed when he did sign that extension. And that was one of the ways that the 49ers were able to get out of that in 2016. So
compared to his Nike contract.
Yeah, I mean, you got those as well. Those aren't quite as open in terms of the public record on that. But this guy's going to get paid, whether it's the 49ers, whether it's somebody else, barring a big injury this season. He's going to get paid, probably 9 figures.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it would be interesting to compare it to Southern Nevada as well, just because it's all the talent that's.
Bryce Harper's probably leading the way on that one.
Yeah. DeMarco Murray, just because of his 2nd and 3rd contracts. And obviously in the future, see how Rome Odunze does, the Gorman kid that just got drafted top 10. But, yeah, some good talent that came out of this region. But yeah, it was good talking NFL and talking to Steve. And any final thoughts on?
Not really. Looking forward going back to the golf tournament. Looking forward to the American Century Championship.
Yeah.
I know they got a lot of young names or new names, I guess, not young. Jason Kelsey's coming. A-Rod, Albert Pujols, Carson Daly, Rob McElwaney. So. They continue. What's his last name?
McElhenney.
Whatever. Yeah, not that. He's kind of like the second apple to Ryan Reynolds with the Wrexham Club.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's a very strong group. I know they don't have Steph Curry, no Timberlake. Patrick Mahomes doesn't look like he's going to come. Pat McAfee hasn't been RSVP'd yet, but it's always a really cool event, and it'll be fun to watch.
Always is. And you put your ideal group of 4 to golf with. Who would you go with?
Yeah, so I had a mailbag question on that. I went, Charles Barkley, Josh Allen, and Brian Baumgartner in this year's field.
In this year's field. I go Jason Kelsey, obviously. And that's a tag Travis Kelsey along there. And then I'll probably do McElhenney because I'm a big It's Always Sunny fan. And he's a fellow Eagles fan, so it'll just be a good time. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining in, and we'll catch you guys next time on Inside the Den.